Thanks for joining me tonight. The COVID hangover as Anthony Fauci faces Congress and the Wuhan deniers in this country are exposed. Alexander Downer will join me. I'll have more on that Boy George song and the hatred coming his way. Also, the executions in Iran and what comes next. Iranian-Australian Tina Kortastrami joins me live. The Commonwealth Games are a gold rush for Australia. I'm going to get Robbo's view on all of that. And in the National Cabinet, well, we're struggling for a quorum. Mark Nicholson might have to sign up for some extra ministries. Let's get cracking. Let's start with the pandemic, that horrible COVID-19 pandemic and the way the overreaction by governments, state and federal, changed this country forever. This plays directly into the current political debate. When I talk about the surge towards one nation and the key issues driving that being immigration and net zero, the other issue that One Nation supporters often raise with me is the pandemic. One Nation was the only party to stand up against the fear-mongering and especially the vaccine mandates. The other way this plays into the debate today is economics. One of the main reasons, perhaps the number one reason we face an inflation crisis today is the unprecedented levels of government spending and debt baked into our system by state and federal governments since the onset of the pandemic. So the pandemic matters to this day, whether it's work from home policies, government debt or personal freedom, the hangover is strong. And as we've touched on, the release of Anthony Fauci's diaries in the US has reignited debate about the origins of the virus. Fauci headed up the Centre for Disease Control in the US and publicly dissed the lab leak theory, pushing the bats in the market story. But his diaries show there were clear differences between what Fauci knew and what he said.
Senator Paul and Dr. Fauci, as you know, they've had this long disagreement over the origins of COVID and whether it came from the Wuhan lab or a wet market. And the senator points to this diary entry from January 2020. Fauci writes, "Now we know the market was not the source, it was the amplifier. Having said that, somewhere the virus jumped from animals to humans." But here's what Fauci told Fox and Friends a few months later.
Are you calling for the closure of the wet markets?
I think they should shut down those things right away. I mean, it boggles my mind how when we have so many diseases that emanate out of that unusual human-animal interface that we don't just shut it down. What we're going through right now is a direct result of that.
What a fraud. And as you know, on this program, I pointed to the likely origins of the virus right from the start, way back in the first quarter of 2020. Before we even saw the worst of the lockdowns, of course, it was clear on publicly available evidence that the virus likely came from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. But as the evidence mounted and Donald Trump pointed to China and my colleague Sharri Markson broke important stories making out that case, the political left and the ABC went into denial. They didn't know where the virus came from, but they were keen to clear the Wuhan lab.
We also think Markson should have told readers that almost every virus expert had dismissed the lab escape theory.
So Paul Barry and the ABC are certain the virus did not escape a lab. Brilliant work. Perhaps they should share their evidence because the world would like to know. After all, this virus seems to be as contagious as ABC groupthink.
The sort of barking mad nature of some of the statements coming out of the United States on this.
Yeah, because the Trump administration is floating a laboratory angle, that's enough for the ABC, en masse apparently, to reject it.
Well, from wild claims about vaccines and the promotion of unproven cures, as well as competing baseless claims about a virus that was created in a lab and unleashed for nefarious purposes, the pandemic has been an opportunity for misinformation and disinformation.
We need to know, and we simply can't be sure of where this virus came from until there's a full, independent, transparent investigation. And the only people in the world who reckon we don't need one of those are Xi Jinping and the Beijing Politburo. Oh, and also Bob Carr, Gareth Evans, Laura Tingle and Paul Barry. Yeah, they are shameless. Just shocking stuff. The ABC is biased on so many issues. This was anti-journalism of the highest order. They objected to any investigation into the facts. They tried to shut down Sharri Markson for revealing important, relevant information. And they pushed a political agenda. In cases like this, the ABC's political bias leads them to misinform the public about reality. And let's come back to the here and now and the revelations in Washington, where Fauci has faced questioning but repeatedly hidden behind the Fifth Amendment. His longtime critic, Senator Rand Paul, remains on the case.
The earliest people who got COVID were not associated with the marketplace. The Chinese CDC was saying this in January 2020. He knew it. He told Dear Diary, but to the public, he commissioned this paper called Proximal Origins, and in it, they go on and on saying it's implausible that it came from the lab.
Now, this reckoning matters. The truth always matters. The world still deserves a proper international investigation into the origins of the virus to guard against future disasters. And in this country, we still need a full-scale royal commission to examine the horrendous lockdowns, curfews, school closures, border blockades, vaccine mandates and wild spending that have changed our country forever. While we're on the ABC, still no apology from them to Gina Rinehart for the vile and violent comments they broadcast about her. Today, the E-Safety Commissioner, who has previously been happy to criticise media comments by Donald Trump and others, well, today she chose not to rebuke the ABC over its violent words targeting the nation's wealthiest businesswoman.
This episode remains online at the moment. Should it be taken down as it does depict violence?
That would be a matter for the Australian Communications and Media Authority, who is the broadcasting regulator.
How very brave of her. But late today, the ABC published a statement from their contributor, Kate McGuinness, whose story generated the offence. The sense of humour featured in each of my films on the Race Around the World program is farcical, said McGuinness. In no way was it my intention to promote violence. My writing is cartoonish and always satirical. Unfortunately, jokes do not land with everyone. Its purpose was never to be taken literally. I apologise to anyone I've offended. How graceless from McGuinness. No direct apology to Rinehart, the critical person, only an indirect apology to anyone silly enough, I guess, to take offence. The ABC says it supports the statement but has nothing further to say while its internal ombudsman considers the matter. I seem to remember when the ABC was quite upset about a call to put a woman in a chaff bag and throw her into the ocean. I don't think that was supposed to be taken literally either. The point is, this stuff is violent, it is offensive, and it serves no purpose other than to incite hatred. Meanwhile, let's have a look at some more of the ABC's work. You're funding it, remember. An online piece today looks at whether shifting political views should impact on romantic relationships. And wouldn't you know it, the first example is this one. We have always both been supportive of the ALP. However, my partner has shifted his attention to One Nation, says Mary, obviously not her real name. Maybe she's not a real person. Mary says for her, the challenge is not the policies her partner is supporting, but what those policies represent about his deeper values. Wow, maybe he's turned into a planet killer. The piece then gets into some advice, some relationship advice for the people confronting this dilemma. I mean, imagine this. Imagine to be civil, having to be civil or even to be caring or loving to someone who has different views to your own. Dear, oh dear, the staff at the ABC must find this stuff highly challenging. But there is hope. One of the experts says that, for example, if you have someone who is critical of the current migration settings, it's not very helpful to go, you're critical of migration, so you must be a racist. Wow! You can be critical of migration settings and not be a racist. Forget relationships advice. This expert needs to go and share this nugget with the ABC News and Current Affairs team. It'll shake up their worldview. Still, when it comes to relationships, they had another expert explaining that there are limits. Political views could bring a relationship to an end. This expert says if there are differences, sometimes they can become irreconcilable. Yeah, sometimes they're irreconcilable. Welcome to the ABC, where it's harder to change your political views than it is to change your gender. When I shared Boy George's new song yesterday, the song that gives vent to the pain and the hope of Israel and fights back against Jew hatred and baseless claims of genocide, I said, and of course you knew, that this would invite a lot of hatred his way. He must have known that as well, which is one of the reasons Boy George deserves such admiration. There have been plenty of people willing to attack him online, sometimes anonymously, sometimes not. And plenty of media keen to amplify that hatred, of course. Even a mob called Artists for Palestine UK has told The New Arab that Boy George's political propaganda reveals a profound lack of empathy for the immense suffering and slaughter of Palestinians in Gaza. Well, that of course is not true. More to the point, that mob ignores the slaughter of Israelis and fails to address why the war continues and which party, that is Hamas, continues to perpetuate the trauma. Have a look at these podcasters.
Did he write that?
It feels like it might have been written by Ben Gvir.
That is, kill every last one of us. Have you got any idea, Boy George, of the bodies that are piled up? Piled up.
There's not a lot more to say other than, oh my God, it's just like, talk about a moral dissonance.
Yeah, moral dissonance. Sure, look, those people know nothing. They just repeat memes they get from social media or the like. They don't bother to inform themselves properly. But that's unforgivable when you're throwing hatred like that at someone with a more informed perspective than yours. For instance, listen to some more of them.
We seem to have even got past, and this is a contentious thing to say, we seem to have even got past the idea that if you are in a war, which he claims it's a war, not a genocide, you're duty bound also to take prisoners and minimise casualties. That's part of the rules of law, which is something Israel just hasn't done.
Where to start, hey? The genocide claim against Israel is a blood libel. You want to talk genocide? Talk Hamas. Hamas exists for genocide, the genocide of Jews in Israel. That's its stated aim, its only goal. Hamas killed hundreds of civilians, of course, but deliberately. Families, the elderly, young girls, the handicapped, burned them alive in their homes. Hamas took hostages, kept hostages for 2 years, kept bodies for years, tortured hostages, raped hostages, and killed hostages, including mothers and their little boys. How can people pretend this stuff away? How can they invite it again? And in the history of warfare, surely no group of people could have been more easily obliterated than the 2 million Palestinians crammed into Gaza. Israel's military might is overwhelming and ranges right up to nuclear weapons. Yet without Israel's support, the people of Gaza would have had no water, no power, no food and no medical supplies. They've received all of that thanks to Israel, and instead of carpet bombing Gaza, which would have been easier for Israel, safer for their service personnel, and of course more effective at getting the terrorists, Israel has dropped leaflets, made phone calls, sent text messages, and provided safe passages for civilians to help them get away from the combat zones, while Hamas has tried to keep them there, and Israeli soldiers have had to go in there, some of them losing their own lives. The reality is the very opposite of the bile spread by people like those podcasters. Anyway, that's where we are. That's why Boy George's moral clarity and courage is so important. But let me add a brighter note, a hint of sunshine when it comes to overcoming anti-Semitism. The winner of the People's Choice Award at this year's Archibalds is this stunning portrait of Jewish Australian leader Alex Rivchin by Michael Zavros. A popular vote for a powerful portrait of a Jewish leader painted by an artist who recently discovered his Jewish ancestry.
Alex emerged as this very powerful leader at a time when we needed that in our nation. And I was very moved, so I reached out and I said, look, I want to capture this somehow. I want to paint you. And yeah, this is where we are.
And for the subject, this was an endorsement that might give some comfort to his troubled community.
When we suffer, we band together, and also art has that unique ability to elevate people, to unite people, and to present hope. And I think that's what Michael's done. And I really hope for my own community that has gone through such anguish for the past nearly 3 years to see someone who's identifiably, visibly and proudly Jewish depicted in this way, and to take out the People's Award. I hope it makes them happier.
Yeah, it's a terrific painting and well-deserved and an encouraging result. The US military has launched fresh strikes on Iran after Donald Trump threatened to hit the regime hard following yesterday's failed attacks on US forces. Here's the latest from our Washington correspondent, Jonathan Kersley.
A day after Iran launched missiles in the direction of US troops in Jordan, the president is giving a direction to the Pentagon. Donald Trump angered after the recent strike.
We had 5 rockets shot going 8,500 miles an hour, and all 5 rockets were knocked down to the ground. But they nevertheless took a shot, so it's our turn. It was a different group than we're dealing with. They've already apologized.
The US had already joined Saudi Arabia to retaliate in Iraq against Iranian-backed militia who launched drone attacks on Saudi oil infrastructure. At least 4 people associated with the IRGC were killed. Having paused the fighting to give diplomacy a chance, it seems diplomacy is now being paused.
Let's catch up with Australia's longest-serving Foreign Minister. We tend to catch up with him all around the world and around the country, but Alexander Downer joins me in the studio tonight. Good to see you, Alexander.
A pleasure.
What do you make of this latest development? We've had on again, off again so often from Donald Trump on Iran, but this is, we understand, quite a significant strike overnight.
Yes, I think he has to do more than that. He has to prosecute this war to the end, not stop and start, have memoranda of understanding and so on. And I'm sorry to say this, but I think they will have to put boots on the ground and seize control of the Strait of Hormuz. I don't think the Americans can achieve their objectives just from the air.
This is a critical decision, though, and this is the one that you would have thought that Donald Trump would want to avoid at all costs, putting soldiers on the ground there. I mean, his whole shtick really has been staying out of forever wars, and no matter how you frame them at the start, history tells you it's difficult to get out.
Yeah, well, that's why he's not doing it. But then don't go to war with somebody unless you are going to be ruthless and prosecute that war until you win. But definitely don't go to war unless you go to war to win. Being half-hearted about it, he'll get a half-hearted result. That will be seen as a victory for the IRGC and a weakening of American power. So I'm sorry to say this, but in the end, he has to seize control of the Strait of Hormuz. Then blockading the Iranian ports will ensure that the IRGC have no source of or significant source of revenue, and that will gradually lead to the erosion of their power. But if he doesn't seize control of the Strait of Hormuz and just keeps aerial bombing going, this will just go on forever.
He keeps talking about the prospects of a deal. Benjamin Netanyahu was in Washington this week. He might be a bit more realistic about those prospects. Have a look.
I'm sceptical about Iran's, mode of operandus. I mean, the method of operating. They always lie, they always cheat, and they always play for time.
Yeah, now, a lot of people say he would say that, wouldn't he? But he's right, isn't he?
He's right. I mean, not everything he says is wrong. He's definitely right about that. Number one, they always play for time. And that's a time-worn strategy of the IRGC. Secondly, you can't take their word for it, and they're very factionalised, they're very divided amongst themselves, so who is able to speak for them? And thirdly, this is a brutal killer regime determined on the destruction of Israel, to retain power in Iran, to spread Iranian power through the Middle East, through their proxies. I mean, what sort of deal could you ever do with these people? I mean, in the end, you have to weaken the regime and weaken it to the extent that it becomes increasingly divided and moderates take it over.
It's worth reminding people that apart from all the horrors it's inflicted around the world, and especially in the Middle East, that this is a regime that has fuelled terror in this very country.
Exactly, and not only in this country, but in other countries as well. I mean, even the present Labor government, which, you know, is not exactly robust in terms of foreign policy, or for that matter, particularly active in terms of foreign policy, even they expelled the Iranian ambassador earlier this year, quite appropriately.
I want to talk more about the hangover from COVID internationally and in Australia on the back of what's been unfolding in the US. Let's have a look at a little bit more reporting on what's happening with Anthony Fauci in the US.
What are you going to tell them about the diaries today? What are you going to say about the diaries?
Lawmakers got pretty much the same response from Dr. Anthony Fauci today after he invoked his Fifth Amendment right more than 100 times in a Senate hearing on the COVID-19 pandemic.
Although it pains me to do so, under the advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions.
That statement threw off the rest of the hearing, leaving GOP lawmakers with zero answers about whether U.S.-funded research in China played a role in creating the virus.
I respectfully decline to answer.
Or about his diary, where Fauci revealed at least 10 scientists supported the lab leak theory, which he publicly dismissed.
Alexandra, it seems to me that Anthony Fauci has become a media hero over the years simply because he was seen as a counterpoint to Donald Trump, because he disagreed with Donald Trump. Yeah. But he has serious questions to answer here that are important not just to America but the whole world.
Well, it's as simple as this. He and his organisation had been providing funding for some of the research in Wuhan at the lab. So the idea of the lab leaking COVID was horrific from his point of view, reputationally hugely damaging. So he denied it. And I'd have to say I spent a lot of the last 2 years at Stanford University. I've been very struck by the research people have been doing there. To cut the argument short, they are coming to the conclusion that it clearly came from the lab, not a deliberate leak from the lab, but an inadvertent leak.
See, this is the point. They try and verbal people on this. They try and verbal the argument. Even Fauci himself is saying, well, why would they put a disease out there that they didn't even have a vaccine to themselves? Because they would suffer from it as well. But that's the whole point. They were doing the work on it and accidentally it escaped.
I know, and so I reject the idea that it was deliberately leaked.
Yeah.
And that's an important point to make.
Yeah.
It was clearly accidentally leaked. And if you look through the detail, how improbable was it that a bat came from, 1,000 kilometres away, ended up in the Wuhan wet market?
Just down the road from the virology centre.
I mean, it's so improbable. It's so improbable. Let me put it this way. It's obvious it came from the lab. It was an inadvertent leak. It was a huge mistake. It's very unfortunate. And Fauci would have done himself proud to fess up instead of, you know, taking the fifth and so on.
And not only Fauci, as I mentioned at the top, we're out of time really, but the ABC and a lot of the rest of the global media, they wanted to deny the lab theory too. Why? Because Donald Trump supported it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why Laura Tingle was against the lab theory, because she hates Donald Trump.
It's pathetic. Thanks for joining us, Alexander.
It's a pleasure.
Alexander Downer, of course, was Australia's longest-serving foreign minister. It's great to have him on the program every week, and especially good to have him on set with me tonight. I want to go now to regional Victoria and catch up with the Shadow Regional Health Minister, Anne Webster, in Mildura. Thanks for joining us, Anne. I want to first up ask you about some trouble on the other side, on the government side, with Luke Gosling facing charges now for allegedly assaulting the administrator, effectively the governor of the Northern Territory. Your response?
Well, you know, this is now before the police. They are doing their investigations. It may or may not go to court. So we have to watch and see. I think, Chris, the big question is, what is the Prime Minister doing about this? Mr Gosling has a role as a special envoy. You know, he really ought to be, the Prime Minister ought to be calling Luke to step down while this whole process goes through the channels and the processes that it needs to do. That's just, you know, it's really a test of the Prime Minister's leadership. That's the real issue.
Yeah, there's no doubt. You would have thought that you would stand someone aside while they're from any ministerial duties, any frontbench duties or significant duties while they're facing a charge like this. Of course, Luke Gosling denies the allegations. He pleads his innocence, and he's been on the record on that with our own Matt Cunningham. When was this? Earlier this month. Let's have a look.
Hey, Luke, did you have a run-in with the administrator on the weekend?
We gave a...
Yeah, you didn't wait for me. That would have been nice. You didn't have a run-in with him? No.
There you go. Federal Labor MP Luke Gosling. The allegation is an assault with the administration. The administrator, effectively the governor of the Northern Territory. Talk about the separation of powers. This one stretches the limits, doesn't it? Let's move on, though, to other issues, Anne. And I want to ask you about this proposal that's getting a lot of attention from Pauline Hanson and One Nation to put up laws that would make it harder for ISIS brides and ISIS fighters to come back into this country. To me, this hardly deserves any attention at all, right? Because One Nation are not going to get a private member's bill up. It's hardly going to get debated, let alone pass through Parliament. It's just an idea.
Well, the fact of the matter is that the whole ISIS returns to Australia have honestly been given the red carpet by the Labor government. They're the ones that we should be holding to account for what they have done or not done. There's no transparency about it. One Nation have put up a policy. Great, that's good. But it needs to go through proper parliamentary processes, including probably a Senate committee. But, yeah, you're right. Is it going to pass through the channels while Labor is in control? I don't think so. Meanwhile, the coalition has, of course, already been working on these policies to ensure that Australians are kept safe. We should not be having returned fighters, terrorists, brides of, the whole thing. I mean, it's outrageous. I think if we look back on this year, we will be asking ourselves, why on earth did this happen?
Yeah, I think what is clear here, and this is very much on the government, it's very clear, as the coalition has pointed out, that the government could have and should have done more to stop or at least delay many of these people returning to Australia. And secondly, the coalition has said, let's sit down, we'll come up with some bipartisan laws to make this more difficult in the future, or perhaps keep people out permanently. And of course, the government haven't taken them up on that. So I think you're right. The focus has to be on the government and the way they've handled this, rather than all the excitement about a One Nation option. Just before I let you go, though, Anne, I'm pretty keen to get your thoughts on the ABC refusing to apologise to Gina Rinehart. I just find this astounding that they can't bring themselves, Hugh Marks or Kim Williams at the leadership of the ABC, to say, no, this is offensive, this goes too far, this warrants a direct apology from the ABC to Gina Rinehart.
Yeah, Well, I mean, I've been reading the commentary today in between meeting a lot of my constituents about this case and about their comments that have said, well, ABC holds themselves apparently to very high standards. Well, you know what? It's not evident that they do. And they have one standard for some women and another standard for other women. And their bias continues to be exposed on pretty well any issue that they choose to report on. The fact that they actually had that video go through their production team, producers accepted it, editors said, yep, let's put this to air, is frankly astounding.
Yeah, unbelievable. Thanks for joining us, Anne. Anne Webster there joining us from Mildura in Victoria's Sunraysia district. We better get to a break. On the other side, I'm going to go back to the situation in Iran and catch up with Iranian-Australian spokesperson Tina Kurdastrami following those executions in the past couple of days. Don't go away. There are new and disturbing reports out of Iran that prisoners have gone on hunger strikes and sewn their lips shut as the public executions of dissidents have occurred. The executions in the Islamic Republic of Iran have not attracted as much media coverage as they deserve, of course. The barbarity of this regime, the regime behind all of the terrorism and missile attacks on Israel, doesn't seem to fit with the media zeitgeist. But some of the horror within Iran has escaped, including pictures of one of the young dissidents. Now, I'm about to show you these pictures, and I've got to warn you, they are disturbing. One of the young dissidents showing the brave young man signalling defiance to the crowds in the city of Isfahan 2 days ago, before his executioners place a black hood over his face. Yeah, we won't show you any more of that horror. It's obvious what followed. But that barbarity and the apparent opposition from the crowds is all we know about what's happening in Iran at the moment. So let me bring in Australian-Iranian activist Tina Kurdastrami, who has been here a number of times. Good to see you again, Tina. Those pictures coming out of Iran, it's so good that we're getting some sense of what's going on there, but it must be so confronting and disheartening. Share your thoughts with us first up.
Well, finally, we're having some obvious, pieces of evidence that we can share with the West, because time and time again, we've been questioned with the information that we are sharing. So showing these videos, it's painful, but it speaks for everything we've been talking about for the last few months. What we just saw right now, there was a protest because of those executions, and about 300 people were taken into custody, 200 were injured. There's another 4 executions coming up in Isfahan as well. As you mentioned, there's a hunger strike going on within one of our Qezel Hesar prisons. These individuals, they are, substance abusers. They haven't gone out killing anyone or anything of the sort, and they will all be facing execution. But even the individuals who are facing execution that may have, killed an officer, which is what they're being accused of. Why is it that suddenly in the West we are now supportive of an execution? Why is it that we don't show any outrage anymore to this barbaric method of dealing with the law?
Well, it is barbaric. It's done in public. It's advertised, and they lift people by their necks in the street. It's absolutely horrific. Obviously done that way for a purpose, and that is to intimidate the population. But we are seeing people, as you say, going there and protesting, and even people signalling and defiantly to the protesters as they're about to be executed. What does that tell you about the level of any resistance in Iran at the moment?
It just goes to show people are willing to die for this regime to be overthrown. This isn't about us in the diaspora coming out and saying, oh, we just want to go back home one day, so please believe us when we say that people are willing to give their lives to overthrow this regime. No, these people are risking their safety, their livelihood every single day. And we're now finally seeing these videos and photos. We're seeing the evidence for this. Again, it's disheartening. It really breaks your heart. But it is the reality of the situation. And this is how the regime regains control. Right now, it has no other methods of showing the world, sending a message to the world that we are still in control, other than killing its own people. And so when you asked me earlier this year, what do you think about the negotiations taking place? Why would you negotiate with a regime who hates its own people, who is killing its own people? To what end will these negotiations lead us anywhere in a diplomatic sense? So, in summary, are you and others, both in the Australian Iranian community and what you're hearing from Iran, glad that America is doubling down on its attacks, even though that must be adding to the suffering for at least some Iranians? I will not speak for Iranians as a whole. We have so many different opinions within the diaspora, within Iran as well. But people within Iran, I've said this time and time again, they need help. Having diplomatic relations with this regime is not going to assist. And we do need to see a lot of aid provided to the people within Iran so that they can overthrow the regime themselves. Tina, thanks for joining us again. I appreciate it. Thanks, Chris. Tina Koudrostrami there, leading member of the Australian Iranian community. After the break, we're going to lighten things up a bit. We're going to check in on sport. The Commonwealth Games, of course, are a gold rush for Australia. We'll get Robbo's view. Great stuff. And 11 more golds for the Aussies on the 6th day of action in Glasgow is the latest news in sport. Most of the winners are coming from the swimming pool, of course. We always start well with the swimming. Australia's reached 47 gold medals now, more than the next 4 nations combined. Here's the latest from Fox Sports News. Let's catch up with sports broadcaster Mark Robinson in Victoria. Good to talk to you, Robbo. I'll tell you what, it would have been a lot simpler to have these games in regional Victoria, because then they could have just dug up all the gold in Bendigo and Ballarat and handed it over rather than shipping it halfway across the world.
It's been magnificent. It really has. I mean, what shits me a bit is that people talk down the Commonwealth Games, and I don't. And I think their achievements, it takes years and years to qualify, and their strength and skill to get on the podium, and let alone that, and win gold. 37 of the 45 gold has come from the swimming pool. It's been an absolute slaughter. I caught up with a couple of hours this afternoon, just watching the replays and you know, the 4x1 medley, and I mean, Guy Taylor, I should say. It's just fantastic, and to listen to them all speak after the event, and the joy and the tears and the happiness. You know, I always talk to you about, you know, how patriotic we get behind sports events, Christopher, and I think this has been a fantastic Commonwealth Games, albeit they're in Scotland and not here in Victoria.
Yeah, I like the way the Paralympics are just in the program, or the Para Games are in the program as well, not separate. So it's all happening at the one time. I just want to go and show you this tally that the Queensland Premier David Crisafulli shared. No doubt plenty of people have been sharing it in Queensland. It's a few days old, this one, but he does the medal tally by state. And at that stage, I don't know if they're still there, Queensland as a state was leading the tally ahead of England and, of course, Canada as well, which is kind of hilarious. But I don't know quite where they're at now. Maybe Victoria's taken the lead.
Oh, I don't know about that. Two things to that. Queenslanders They got sunshine all year round, mate. They're the swimmers. And the second thing I can say is Victoria's running last in just about everything else, so we might as well just throw in the Commonwealth Games swimming.
I want to go to a couple of aspects of the Games. One of them is Lachlan Kennedy's silver medal. It just pipped at the post. Brilliant run, though, and the fastest run ever by an Australian man. That's something, a new Australian record. And, you know, I don't like the identity politics, but it's worth saying when it comes to the sprint events, this is the fastest 100 metres ever run by a man not of African descent, by a white man.
Well, no, that's not. That's a fact. I mean, let's not quibble about that.
Yeah, well, it's pertinent in this sport, isn't it? And an amazing effort by the Aussie.
I actually thought he'd won watching it. I thought he had won. And to be honest, I was disappointed. But then you think, well, you're second in the Commonwealth. Don't get too disappointed. But to be the fastest white man, absolutely, we all know. I mean, we look at the Olympic Games, the Commonwealth Games, the fastest black men in the world. They've dominated for so long. So for Kennedy to be up there in that company is just awesome for him, and it's awesome for Australia.
Yeah, now there's another incident I'm going to show a grab of. This is quite incredible because there's a bloke who used to race for Australia, Matt Richardson, but he was born in England, so he's switched back to England. He was going to be heading to the Commonwealth Games for the cycling, but he was just finishing off an event in Japan earlier this week, and have a look what happened. Unreal. In Aussie rules terms, he was shirt-fronted off the ball.
Yeah, well, it does look terrible. I'm just so wrapped for everybody that it didn't have at the games, and it was an Australian rider who rode into him because there'd be accusations flying everywhere. But that said, that looked disgraceful. As that commentator said then, that looked beyond unsportsmanlike. That looked to me like it was targeted.
Yeah, it sure looked that way, and no serious injury, thankfully, but obviously pretty badly hurt. But you could have anything could have happened there. Just a final word on footy, and Josh Fraser, the interim coach at Carlton. I can't believe this is dragging on. I would have thought, given what he's done with that club, they should either just tell him quietly that he's got the job or that he won't get it, so that he gets to choose whether he just moves on or grabs the job. He shouldn't have to go through a process, should he?
Very astute, Christian. I know you love your footy. No, I agree. I mean, the other three going for, I think, Kelly, Graham and Corey Enright, I mean, they're assistant coaches. This guy was an assistant coach. Now he's got the main seat. He's won 7 and lost 2. I can't believe that he's not the raging favourite for the job. Now, he says the thing that's a little bit not concerning, he kept saying, I don't know if I'm ready, but he's now hinting that he will go for the job. And if he does go for the job, I think he should get it.
Yep, I'm with you, Robbo. I'm with you, no doubt about that. Thanks for joining us, mate. We'll catch you next week. Mark Roberts there, all over the sport, plenty happening all the time, and we better take a break. On the other side, we've got just half of the National Cabinet in. I wonder if Mark Nicholson has signed himself up for some secret ministries. I'll find out after the break. On Thursdays, of course, we wrap up the week with National Cabinet. Mark Nicholson joins us from Stepmate Studios in Melbourne. But, Mark, Tim Blair's away today, so I'm wondering whether you might have secretly had yourself sworn into all of his portfolios.
That's right, mate. I've pulled a ScoMo, mate. I've signed myself up for every ministry in the National Cabinet, excluding yours, of course, my fearless leader. We're going to get out there. We're going to... this is all new. This is my first time on News24 as well. This is so much change. I'm not used to so much change. I'm here in Victoria.
So many numbers.
We don't see this sort of change down here in Victoria very often.
So many numbers in that name. News24. Tell us how different things are in Victoria now that you have Ben Carroll as Premier.
Oh, mate, it's fundamentally different down here, isn't it? These people, they tout change all the time, and they throw this word around, change all the time. But the only thing that changes is their position. The only thing that changes is their circumstances. That's all that ever changes. It's the same all the time. I'm pretty sure Ben Carroll, if you look at him, he kind of looks like Jacinta Allen in a suit, who kind of looked like Dan Andrews in a skirt. It's all the same. It's always the same.
I want to run you through some of the things he's had to say to get your thoughts on it. Here he is on working from home.
I want to be crystal clear, work from home does work for families, and now it will go through that parliamentary process, and we will consider anything that is sensible.
Fair enough. Apparently Jacinta Allen's working from home. She hasn't just fronted up at Parliament this week.
She's definitely working from home, or barely working from home, like most people that are working from home. So this is the thing. They don't get this. That people, you just need to get the government out of our lives. That's the problem that's down here in Victoria. The biggest obstacle between us and success is the government. They just need to get out of the way. As a small business owner, I don't want them to tell me that I have to have people come into my studio. If you want to work from home, sure, go for it. But it's up to me as to how I run my own business. Like they've stuffed it up as much as they already could. And to be honest, the biggest change is that they're going to be even entertaining the idea of something sensible. That is a dramatic change. I'll give him that. Credit where credit's due. Sensibility, being sensible is a big change for the Victorian government.
I think we'd probably all be better off if most of our politicians just worked from home and let it be. No more laws. No more laws, no more schemes, no more intrusions. Yeah. Let's have a look at this. We heard this from Ben Carroll soon after he was sworn in.
Let me make one thing very clear. I am not Daniel Andrews. I am not Jacinta Allen.
You don't sound like you're completely convinced about that, Mark.
Mate, do you blame me? How often do these people lie to me? Like I said, I think this guy looks a lot like Jacinta Allen in a grey suit. I don't know. I've never seen them in the same room together. Actually, no, that's a lie. I've seen him constantly next to those two people for the last 10 years, nodding along, agreeing with everything that they ever said. Yeah. He has done he is just as culpable as those two for the destruction of this state.
Yeah, he can't erase all those pictures. He can't take us back to year zero. Let's move to federal politics, and the man you admire so much, Chris Bowen, is trying to get all of the world's leaders and all the world's spenders and all the world's climate believers to the Fiji conference that we're paying for, but a lot of them are staying away.
Mm-hmm. Mate, how repulsive do you think you have to be to not be able to get any world leader to come to Fiji?
Exactly. Yeah, maybe they're trying to save their emissions.
It's the perfect place. It must, but surely not. Like, that can't be it, because they would go to anything. They'll take their private jet and they'll do a couple of laps in the air before they land to get into Fiji. You must be so repulsive, or this conference must be so repulsive not to go. In fact, there's a good position to change for Albo. Why doesn't he shut it down for 150 mil? Save the country, make everyone happy. And honestly, we'll go up in the polls if he changed his position on that one.
It's like knocking back a lamb roast, knocking back a trip to Fiji. It just doesn't happen unless there's a good reason for it. And Chris Bowen might be the reason. Mm-hmm. I've got to show you a little bit of Anthony Fauci refusing to answer any questions in Washington to get your thoughts. Have a look.
What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color's the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment.
Democracy and accountability in action.
Yeah, exactly. No wonder people have lost trust in the system. Am I right? Like, it's just so wrong. I'm glad they made him do it 111 times because he was exhausted by the end of it. And I was surprised that he had to keep looking at his notes the entire time as well. Yes. By the 111th time, you thought you'd be able to just bang that out.
Yeah. Which amendment is it?
It's ridiculous.
The fifth. The fifth, yeah. Thanks.
The fifth,
thanks
that's right. Yes, number 5.
Thanks for joining us, Mark. I appreciate it. Enjoying the new glow of Ben Carroll's Victoria. That's all we got for you tonight. Thanks for watching. Peter Credlin's up next.